Welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast, where business leaders come to share their advice and journeys to success with existing and emerging leaders of America. Now, here's your host, Dylan Bloyd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lee Benson, the CEO of Execute to Win, a renowned speaker, author, and strategist in value creation and leadership. Lee has spent over 30 years building and leading companies that create real impact. He's founded 7 companies, including Able Aerospace, which he scaled from 2 employees to 500 across 60 countries and eventually achieved a 9-figure exit. His work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNBC, Bloomberg, and other major media outlets. At Execute to Win, Lee helps organizations of all sizes accelerate value creation through his MIND methodology, a framework designed to ensure teams focus on what matters most, achieve results, and maintain culture even in high-growth environments. In this episode, we'll explore Lee's journey from his early entrepreneurial experiences to leading high-growth companies, his philosophy on value creation and disciplined execution, and actionable insights for driving impact in both business and leadership. Lee, welcome to the show.
Dylan, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Lee, you've been an entrepreneur at heart since the very beginning, right? So starting out pulling weeds for just 25 cents an hour. And
Yeah.
over the past 30 years, you founded and led multiple companies that have had significant exits. So looking back, what lessons from those early experiences have shaped the way you create value and approach business today?
Yeah. When you said, pulling weeds,
Yeah.
25 cents an hour, so that's 6 years old. That's mid to late 60s.
Yeah.
And back then, 25 cents was a lot of money for a kid, and my family didn't have much money. That's just the way it is for some families. And if I wanted something, I could go out and earn it. I just remember it feeling really good. I didn't earn it from a friend or a family member. It was the real world seeing value and paying for it. And I couldn't articulate it back then, but the way I describe it now, and I've been thinking about this way for probably a couple of decades, I call it the value creation cycle. I struggle to get a capability, even the proper way of pulling weeds around rhubarb and other things in the garden, so I don't just, pull the bad stuff or the good stuff out with the bad. And then that would build my confidence. I'd use it to create value and earn money. And then I would just keep taking bigger steps. And then that went to mowing lawns and paper outs and shoveling snow and dishwasher, busboy, cook. And playing in a rock and roll band first half of the 80s, over 1,000 shows, made most of my money doing that. And then the first real business in 93. And then I've started 8 businesses from scratch. I've sold 3. I'm CEO of 2 today. I love being on the front lines creating value. So your question, for me, it's trading my best efforts for the accumulated best efforts of other people in the world. And the more value I create, the more value they see, the more they're willing to pay for. Everybody's winning going through it. I wouldn't say I'm addicted, but I'm really hooked on continually increasing the value that I create in the world, and holistic value. And, it's material, it's emotional energy, it's connectedness, which I call spiritual value creation.
Okay.
And there's no end to it. I'll be 65 this year, and I guess I'm acting like I've got another 100 years, but I'm going to do this till I can't, because it increases my fulfillment every year.
Man, yeah. When I was doing my research, it just really truly shows the amazing things that you've done. And, it really was surprising when I was looking into Able Aerospace, because like we mentioned in the intro, you grew that from 2 employees to 500 across 60 countries before a 9-figure exit. So I'd love to start there a little bit and talk a little bit about that, because I want to know what were the key decisions or strategies that enabled that kind of an exponential growth.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. The first business was something called Able Metallic Services, electroplating shop, and then Able Engineering in 95, and then Able Aerospace in 99, and so on. But there's always an evolution. Like you and I, you're a business guy. We figure stuff out. We keep growing. I think that's the goal, right? That we grow personally and professionally every single year. And I feel like every year that goes by, even today, I grow as much, if not more, than the previous 3 years combined. And now that's how I know I'm on the right path. So going through all that, I think at first it feels like a Patrick Lencioni fable when I describe it, but it's like work really hard, but we didn't work very smart. Now let's get smarter. Now people aren't happy. Let's fix the culture. And so I'm going through all this stuff all the way along, but everything was about creating value for customers. I wasn't trying to let's make a bunch of money and go celebrate and go on a trip the next month. It's let's keep creating more and more value. Let's figure out what aircraft we want to support with which products and services, because we were all aftermarket. We repaired, overhauled, manufactured parts with a mission of safely reducing aircraft operating costs for our customers. And we just kept getting better and better at that. And we'd figure out where every one of the aircraft are on the planet, where we have a product or service that we can provide. We know who's flying it, how many hours or cycles are flying, what percentage of that we have. And I had no intention of selling the business. We got to about 100 million in sales. And I was just told our employees were around, because it was 10 years ago, 540 employees
Wow.
at the time that I sold it. And we had a company that ran at us 3 times to buy it. And finally, the offer was really good. And I've had a bunch of other things I wanted to go do and expand this concept of value creation to hundreds, if not thousands of organizations. And I'm well on the way to doing that.
Mm.
But it was really just this focused approach to creating more value for customers, getting smarter and smarter about how we ran after it, how we built our capability. We were vertically integrated on almost everything. By the end, you could give us a data plate with a serial number of a helicopter, just that data plate, and we could build the entire helicopter around the serial number plate.
Wow.
And we were that capable. We had a huge electroplating facility, machining and grinding, inspecting. It was crazy cool. And I think it was, well north of 300,000 square feet in and around the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport when I sold it. That was it. It was just staying focused on creating value. And then another thing that seems to surprise a lot of folks is um, we never had to raise $1 of outside investment capital to grow the business. So we didn't have to give equity away or do any of that. And our business was ridiculously capital intensive. At the end, we had tens of millions in equipment, tens of millions in inventory, and just stuff scattered all over the planet, people everywhere. And we were just super disciplined around, in the early days, hunting and killing and using that to pay the bills. And what we distributed was formulaic every year. I controlled all the equity, but I had 13 employees that acted and were thinking like owners and getting those results. So they had an opportunity to get equity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I controlled all of it, super disciplined. Every year when we make profit, this is what we distribute, nothing more. If you want more, get better results. And that cash flowed us all the way through to the exit. And had they not come at us to buy us, I'd still be running it today, probably with a few other businesses.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Was it difficult from a personal level to let go? And I know the offer was significant, it was obviously you said yes and sold, but was it personally difficult to let it go and let somebody else kind of run it and then not be a part of it anymore after you built it from scratch, right?
Yeah, so my baby, if you will, because that's like an
Yeah,
expression where you got rid of your
correct.
company or baby or whatever it is.
Hmm.
My baby was the culture that we developed and how people work together in this concept of value creation. And I think a challenge for a lot of business leaders is they make that their identity and everything is in the business. And in those cases, it's really hard to let go and they can be depressed afterwards and all of it. But for me, I already had another consulting business, ETW, and I'm building software and doing leadership development programs. I've got all this stuff going. The page was already turned. I stayed 17 months to make sure the transition went well because we had, 500 plus people. I wanted to make sure they had a job because a lot of times big companies buy smaller ones or mid-sized companies like ours and they destroy it. They've
Hmm.
been great stewards of it. For the first time since I left, I went in this last January. So what is that, like 8.5 years later?
Yeah.
And or 9 years later, they've been amazing, keeping the brand going and all the team members. There was probably 50 people that ran me down and gave hugs, and it was such a cool experience. But no, and I don't know if you saw this in your research, but one of my business partners in my consulting business, ETW, was Jack Welch before he passed away. And I remember the first thing he said when I, sold the company in 2016 is, "Whatever you do, don't retire." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Jack, I've already got 3 other things going." I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
And even to the end with Jack, I mean, he was flying around the world for CD&R doing business reviews. Like he was in the game and that kept him so like just smart and sharp and all of it until unfortunately his body failed him. And I think that's a lesson for all of us. Never get out of the game. Keep
Yes.
growing, learning, and creating value in some way, no matter what.
Yes, exactly. Do you believe that also like extends your life, right? Because the term keeps you young, right? Constantly adapting and learning. And because a lot of people, when they get into business, and almost like they hear that they need to be continuing to learn and read more and listen to podcasts and do things that are going to expand your knowledge. But it feels like some of the greatest leaders still read 2 to 3 books a month. And those guys obviously you would think know it all, but they don't, right? So is that kind of the reason why they say that you should just keep adapting, keep learning, stay in the game?
Yeah, I think you're pointing to something that's super important, and then there's a practicing it, and there's a virtue signaling piece of it, so you look good, feel good, or sound
Yeah.
good. And and when folks say, "I wanna stay in the game, I've made a bunch of money, so I show up to a few charity dinners, and I'm on a board of a nonprofit," or whatever, they're not really leaning in to create value, so they're not
Mm.
growing. They want to be seen a certain way, is how it comes off to me
Yeah.
in a lot of cases. For me, when I get involved with a nonprofit, I'm in there with my team helping run it and making sure we're having the impact with all my business, like, I'm fully leaning in to do it. And if we're not growing, at some point, you really do start declining. If you don't do that work, there's a lot of studies out there, just look at men, and it's slightly different for women. But by the time we, approach 50, there's a significant cognitive decline. I'm like, this is what the data says.
Mm.
But those that stay in the game, it doesn't decline. And when you talk about learning, so you've got your podcast. I learned so much on my Show Your Value podcast that I have.
Yeah.
I spend, every week I get a new amazing guest, and I spend at least 10 hours getting ready for them. I read one or two of their books,
Mhm.
and I watch podcasts. I do research, and I don't have time for it. But oh my gosh, I'm so glad I do it every single time I do it, because it's one of the best things I do to keep growing and learning.
Yes.
And then I connect dots better, faster, and I can apply it to it's probably 24 plus CEOs that I coach, mostly in 3 groups, but I've got 4 I coach individually. And these companies range from startup to about $1 billion. And the learning's incredible. Like, I never run out of stuff to do or think about or better ways to connect dots because I'm learning and growing. I'm really leaning and I'm doing it on the front line. And I just really want to make a point about what you said.
Mhm.
Pretending to do it so it looks like you're doing is totally different than doing it. So reading 50 books in a year would be a light year for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because how can you continue to provide value to your clients if you're not continuing to learn, right? I agree with you 100%. And, I want to circle back a little bit to the concept of value creation, right? Because many companies chase growth at all costs, right? And you know this firsthand. So why do you believe value creation, not just growth, is the ultimate measure of success?
Yeah. Creating value is totally different to me than when people say adding value.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like semantics, but add value, it starts to sound like, business virtue signaling and all that.
Hmm.
We want to create value.
Right.
And I look at creating value holistically, not only the material part. And the material part is wildly important, but if you get it out of balance, that's where things start to go sideways. And one of the questions I love to ask CEOs and senior leadership teams is, what's your job? What's
Yes.
the most important thing you should be doing? And for a CEO, it should be continually and responsibly increasing the value of their business. That's your job. And by proxy, the senior leadership team, these could be small companies, mid-size, big size, their job collectively is to increase the value of the business responsibly and continually over time. And so when you say, for example, growth at all cost or this or that, it's every industry is different. Some you can triple every year and you can comfortably do it. Others, like mine in aerospace, it was a real challenge for 15 years straight prior to selling to grow just over 20% compounded annual growth every
Mm.
year. We did have one year early on. It was almost 100%. It was like 98% growth, just about killed
Wow.
everybody. But we laughed our butts off. We had so much fun
Yeah.
doing it, but it was hard. So some it's harder to grow faster, but like, what is the right rate for an organization? And when you're continually increasing the value of the business, typically the most important number for the business is going to be some multiple of profit. You can call it EBITDA, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's revenue, but so what is that? And where do you want it to be in 12 months, 24, 36 months? What's your realistic plan, stretch, but realistic plan to actually get there, working backwards from something that's based in reality? And you're working towards that. And when I talk about holistic value, I've got the material piece. We need resources to grow. Our employees need paychecks to support their families. It's incredibly important. I've even had employees say, well, it's not about the money for me. And I tell them, well, I'm going to worry about it for you. And in this
Mhm.
case, I'm thinking of your wife and your kids' future college if you're not. And again, I think we've been trained to say stuff like that because it sounds good. No, it's important. And then the second category is emotional energy. I think positive emotional energy is the scarcest commodity on the planet. I've thought that for decades now, because when it's on a scale from 1 to 10, if it's firing on 9 or 10, it doesn't matter what happens. You're going to deal with it and you're going to handle it. No problem. My leg fell off. I've got another one. This is no problem. We'll get through it. But when it's on 0 or 1, you get a flat tire. It ruins your entire week. I can't believe this happened to me. I'm such a
Yeah.
victim. Oh my gosh. So I think positive emotional energy is the X factor for leaders. I think all of us as leaders, we're creating the environment from which everybody creates value. We can't control how they feel, but we can create an environment that encourages productive, full-on engagement with whatever the outcomes that they've been charged with achieving for the business. And then the third category, I call it spiritual value creation, which is all about connectedness. So go back to the Able Aerospace, which
Yeah.
I sold Able Engineering and Able Aerospace. We combined them into one, sold it as Able Aerospace to Textron. And again, Textron has been amazing stewards of that company and brand. I did lots of programs to drive connectedness between the team members, even putting in a 10,000 square foot gym, told the employees, if you train 2 days a week for an entire month, we'll pay 100% of your health insurance premium the following month. If you don't do that, you pay 20%, we pay 80%, is still good. Oh, and by the way, if you bring your family members, spouses, kids into our other programs, we'll put even more money into your paycheck. And we had about 70 to 75%, and it would bounce in there of the population taking advantage of this. Think about what that did to drive collaboration and teamwork and communication and knock down artificial barriers in the business. As senior vice president with a frontline technician, they're all the same in gym shorts, and usually the frontline technician is better in gym shorts than the more seasoned, senior vice president. And lots of other parties. We'd have Christmas parties, and of course, I'm into music. I'm calling from my home music recording studio right now.
Yeah.
And we would always put a band together from people that work in the business.
Mhm.
And so I would always be in the band, but it's about showcasing the team members. And we had so many employees, we could have probably put 4 bands together for all the, but we would have 800 plus people show up to our Christmas party.
Wow.
And every weekend there were 10 or 15 barbecues everybody was invited to. We never once, that I can think of, had a leader quit. We had to ask a few to leave over the years, but they never quit on their own. That says something about this culture. So when I'm creating value holistically, material, super important, positive emotional energy, I want it to feel amazing to be there. Everybody's running through walls for each other. Every team member's acting like the CEO of their own role.
Mhm.
And we're doing all this stuff to connect everyone and drive those relationships. I create the environment. I I can't make anybody, as I said earlier, feel a certain way. And whenever leaders say, they stand, we want to have this amazing culture and we want people to feel this and we're going to do this because of you. It comes like 90+% of the time, it sounds so inauthentic. It's
Mhm.
just not believable. And so I always went with, let's just be this way and they can choose to react to it the way they're going to react to it. I'm going to create the environment the best way that I possibly can. I really care about everybody, and I'm going to hold them accountable. And we have
Mhm.
performance standards. I'm going to do both, and I think leaders get the most respect when they do those 2 things well.
Yes, exactly. And you're not going to make every single person happy, but you're going to create an environment that's going to thrive, right? And man, I wish we could get this in the hands of every CEO and every leader, because I've been on the other end of it. I've seen leaders who have said money's not going to solve all of your problems, and it's let them to be the one to decide that, right? Obviously, we wish we could give every employee $1 million, but at the same time, if you can some sort of way help them out and they're providing value to the company, why wouldn't you want to increase that and not say, well, you're asking for a lot, but it's not going to solve all your problems? That's the opposite of what you should be saying.
Who is that leader? And I've seen this.
Yes.
They decide, I know what's the right amount for you. I've seen leaders put a bonus in place that has no cap on it. And if you 3x, well, that would be amazing. Look how much money you make. And I have one example, I won't use names,
Yeah.
where the leader hit 11 times 1,100%. And the bonus would have been huge. And they backed out of the deal and said, well, we thought, that's too much money. That's not, this should be enough for you, is what they said.
Hmm.
That is so crazy that leaders think they know what's best for everybody else. All I can do is what I just said. I create the environment,
Hmm.
and we have rules, and we have, this is what we pay for these different things. Choose to play or not.
Yes.
And I think, to your point, if an employee says, I'd like to make $1,000,000 and they're currently making $12 an hour, rather than laughing, which you might chuckle, like
Right.
a lot might, I would rather say, okay, well, this is the path. If you can create $2,000,000 or $3,000,000 in value for the business in this way, then it's worth that.
Absolutely. Yes.
So if it's hard to do, but if we could figure what that is out, why not?
Exactly. And especially if that employee's proving that they can provide that type of value, if you're not going to be reciprocal, they're going to go do it for some other company, right? They're not going to stick around.
Or themselves, or they
You're right. Yeah,
start their own business. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. But now you're the CEO of Execute to Win, Lee. Where you've developed the mind methodology. I'm excited to talk about this. Can you explain how this framework works and why it succeeds where other operating systems seem to fail?
Yeah, there's no probably perfect operating system, and this is
Right.
literally a 3-day conversation to have. Um, but what I do believe fundamentally, or just sort of foundationally, is that every single team member in an organization should be able to articulate in a way that makes complete sense and objectively measured, how do you create value for this business?
Hmm.
We hired you in this role to create this value. We're paying you X. It needs to be X plus this, or we go out of business and we're losing money on what we're paying everybody.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable, right, Dylan?
Yeah.
We should know that. Okay. So then every team should be designed to create value in an objective way. And I wanted a really simple way to see the entire organization. So imagine 64 leaders, over 500 team members. Most CEOs, presidents, senior leaders, they spend a lot of time getting the lay of the land to figure out what's going on. I didn't want to spend any time doing it. I wanted to see it. And so at the top of the organization, the way we value our aerospace business, to keep using this example,
Hmm.
was EBITDA, because the more of that, the bigger, the multiple and the value of the company goes up. Well, as I go out by function, HR, engineering, operations, legal, quality, like all of that, they all had their own most important number that was reflective of the value that they brought, whether they were winning or losing. And I could see across the board 64 different teams, red, green, or yellow. I could dig into it. I could see exactly the work they're doing to get on track or stay on track. And I could see what they're talking about in meetings. I can see the actions they're taking. And literally within minutes, anywhere, I know whether they're just checking a box or they're in the game, leaning in to create more value. It's so simple and elegant to be able to see that from the top all the way out to the front line. And gosh, everybody knew their numbers. They knew how they created value for the organization. They acted like CEOs of their own little department or their role, depending on what was going on. Some of the departments were big, with over 100 team members in it. And what a great environment. It's really simple. And I think a lot of the other operating methodologies that I was looking at the time and still see today out there, they changed the language in the organization. So people are learning a new language. What you don't call a goal anymore. You call it something else.
Hmm.
And it makes process more important than what is most important. And most of those operating systems drive the CEOs crazy. Like, they just don't like it, too in the weeds, details, they get bored. Well, if it was doing the right work that was energizing, they wouldn't get bored. Or they love how intellectual it is at the senior team, but you go down one or two layers and it's lost on everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's how I look at it. And I created the mind management system, which is basically most important number in drivers. So what's your most important number and your plan for it? So if it's EBITDA, hey, we're starting at 0 at the beginning of the year. We want it to be, 10 million at the end of the year, or a million, or whatever it is. At any point in time, are we on track? Is it linear? Do you have seasons, seasonality to your profit? But you put out your plan, and at any point in time, you're on track or you're not. And I can see that for every single team. And I remember when Jack Welch looked at it in 2011, I built this to run my aerospace company, not to sell to others. And now it's available we have hundreds of companies using it. He looked at it and his eyes glazed over and he just said, man, the transparency is scary.
Yeah.
And then he went on to say, if I had this at General Electric, the results would have literally been exponentially better. And he said the reason why is because for everything you've heard about GE and Crotonville and all they did to develop people, the best he could ever do with his team is fully develop, follow, and position the top 500 to 600 leaders in all of GE of over 400,000 people during his time at the end. And he said with this system, he could have done that with 2,000. So the results literally would have been, exponentially better that way going in. But that's why I did. That was a kind of a big answer to your question. But how do we, there's so much, our job as leaders, I think we should be simplifying complexity and the elegance of that. I think that's really why this is such a winner.
Right. So when you say most important number, is that really how you're helping dial in on what maybe where they need to provide more value or put more attention to, or is it more along the lines of what they're already doing great at? Is a mixture of the both? And then I guess after you get that to where you want it to be, do you pivot and start working on another area of the business?
Well, it's really all areas at once. So what is
Oh,
it for
okay.
the business? Like, how would you value the business? Based on what? Well, if it's a multiple of EBITDA, then okay, well, EBITDA is the most important number for the business. Everything else is subordinate.
Hmm.
And then every department, it's the same. So everybody can be putting this in place at the same time. And think of it like your conversation with Tim Brown, which I really enjoyed from your podcast. Um, it's the most important number is really a lagging indicator, right? It's what happened. So think about playing a football game. That scoreboard, that's the most important number. But think about all of the other leading indicators, because in the mind management system, we still track lots of other KPIs to help us make better decisions. So you got every team member and their performance stats in practice, all these other things going on, all the stats of the other teams and how we're positioning in terms of, reaching the championship and all of it. We're looking at all that, but the most important number is did we win or not? And
Right.
every team has a number that says they're winning or not, or the way I like to think about it, they're creating the value they were designed to create or not.
I totally understand now. So just a combination of it all, what and results in the most important number is is the ideology behind it.
Yeah, for every single team. If they're
Yes.
winning the game, how do we know? And if they're not, you can drill in and see exactly what's going on within minutes. And most leaders, when I ask that question, how long does it take you to get the lay of the land of what's actually happening? They just roll their eyes like you literally can't. Well, with
Right.
this, you can. Whether you've got a 10-person company, 1,000-person company, a 10,000-person company, doesn't matter.
Mm, wow. So how does it work for you? Do you go in personally? Do you have a team of people working with you that go in and work within industries and kind of help dial in with that when it comes to your business?
Yeah, on our website, etw.com, we actually have an on-demand version where you can go in, you can go through a full course, and you sign up to use the tools around this to make it easy to sustain and scale it. First user is free, and we charge $12 a user after that, so they can do it on their own. They can read my book, Your Most Important Number. They can go through the course, and they can self-serve. And then the next level, they can be self-serving and join our leadership value lab, where every month I do a live call and they get to ask questions, and there's just lots of resources available. And then the next level is we actually help them. So yes, I've got a team of consultants. I've got one coming in from Poland next month, and he's building a nice business out there. So we're growing it around the world, and the folks that we have that can help, others do it. And I like to have at least a few of those that I'm working with the companies at any point in time, because I want to stay on the front lines learning. So I'm helping them set it up and coaching the CEO typically, but also helping the teams, make this all go a lot faster. Have other team members that do that. And then I've got 3 different CEO mastermind groups that I run, and it's an evergreen format that's designed to continually responsibly increase the value of each member's business. I limit it to 8 members in each group, so
Mm,
every 2 months we can do a deep dive in everyone's business.
right.
So I'm coaching CEOs that way, and all of those, within a short amount of time, they start using the mind management system. They start using the tools to make it easy to deploy it. And then the same thing with the folks that I coach individually. But I've got a team that does this too. We're all doing this together along with gosh, lots of companies that we've invested in. We have our own private fund that we invest in businesses too.
Right. Yeah. This is amazing because a big part of what you like to talk about is culture, right? And so obviously with what they're doing when they're implementing this has to be driving up their culture, right? Especially as they're growing exponentially like you did. It's easy to lose your culture when you go from 2 employees to 500. It's not going to feel the same, right? Or 200 to 1,000 or 10,000. It's not going to feel the same because it's like, man, this used to feel like a family, right? But there's ways of still keeping the culture intact, right? Doing this with what you're talking about.
That's a challenging topic or question because what culture are you losing? And was it really the right culture? And I think about, the goal as a CEO is I want to connect culture to creating value.
Mhm.
That's it. So everything we do. And I think team members feel the most fulfilled, self-esteem rises when they accomplish challenging things. And when you create that culture, the harder it gets, the harder everybody laughs, and we're going for it. If you have a culture of super low accountability where everybody's coddled, almost like parents today taking all the struggles
Yeah.
away from the kids, and then you start growing, somebody buys the business, now we need to perform, and everybody says, "Oh, it's not the same culture. I can't believe this." But we had a culture of people were giving maybe 30 or 40% of the output that they were being paid 100% to provide.
Yeah.
So when you say keep the culture and all that, it's so nuanced and it's all over the place. I like creating a culture that again, it connects culture to actually creating value. Everybody's understands the value they should be creating in their role or the team that they're leading as a leader, and they're constantly developing personally and professionally to continually improve the value they create, which is good for all stakeholders.
Mhm.
That's the culture that I like to have.
Nice.
And sometimes when I go into businesses, they've had a really coddling culture. The CEOs are, super frustrated. These people aren't performing. I can't believe it. I want to get everybody's most important numbers in place. So once they see it, they'll start doing it or we can deal with it. Well, one thing about the mind management system is it exposes strengths and weaknesses really fast
Mm.
of the CEO all the way to the front line, like really fast. And in some cases, okay, it's all exposed. Now we need to make these changes and they don't want to do it
Yeah.
because well, I care about people and you can't just fire. We're not coming in to fire everybody. It's like, this is what we have. You're making a conscious choice not to deal with someone that could be, let's say, for example, in a marketing role or a software development product owner role that isn't capable. And not dealing with that to me is really weak leadership because not dealing with that is hurting every other team member that's getting it done
Mhm.
because it's a huge part, potentially of their business. So there's some interesting choices here. And so laying it out and knowing what to do is pretty straightforward. Doing it can be an emotional challenge. I get that. And then how you do it, like the thousand nuanced ways of
Mhm.
guiding through that process of execution is where the real value is created. And the nice thing about the mind management system is it helps develop that wisdom faster, but you have to be going through it to actually develop the wisdom to be a certain way while you're executing. I don't know, does that make sense? Because
It
there's
does.
so many books like follow my 3-step process, just
Yeah.
do these 4 things. Well, it's the way that person did those 4 things that made it work.
Mhm.
So help me in how do we infuse into leaders the 1,000 ways that they would navigate doing those 4 things with all the forces against them? Hidden agendas, lack of capability, ignorance, lack of alignment, like all these things, competition. It's how we navigate doing those 4 things that
Right.
matters.
Yeah, exactly. There's no one size fits all for every business, right? It's got to be obviously, how they execute exactly how you said it. But that just shows the importance of every leader from executive leader to the leaders on the floor, right, are speaking the same message and ensuring that they're getting the most out of the value creation of their employees that they're responsible for. But it's just how they do it and how they execute on that is what is going to be different.
Yeah, and if you have the environment right, the team members will feel like they own it
Mm-hmm.
because they do.
Yeah.
I don't want them I'm not gonna go out and say, "I want you to feel this way, and here's my you're gonna feel this way program that I have." No, I'm gonna create this environment. I know I got it right when they're running through walls and making it happen and having a blast, even when it's hard.
Yes, exactly, and eliminate where you're just feeling like a number, right? Of course, like you said, it's not that they're coddling this employee, but it's more so just giving them that they're truly creating value and there's some ownership behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and what are the qualities of a manager that people just love working for and will really lean in and create a lot more value for? I can only think of two that are at the top of my list in all of my 46-year overnight success stories since I became an adult,
mm,
through today. One was at a restaurant, at Coco's restaurant when I was 16, and the other one was Jack Welch. And I've
wow.
worked with gazillions of leaders. And so what's the difference? And, I think it kind of comes down to, are you there with the team member and you really want them to win and you're taking the time to see them and develop them, give them candid but caring feedback and never tolerate games? Um, that's amazing. I mean, there's amazing coaches in the, different sports that have that reputation. There's very few leaders in the business world that have that reputation and do it. And I think we all can develop that, but it has to be how you are. It can't be, I'm going to come in and do these three things today. You need to transition into being that way.
Yes, absolutely. No, I could not agree more because you're absolutely right. There are the teams that, and I've been a part of teams where it's literally just show up to work, get your job done, and go home, right? But then those same employees are just like, man, just there's nothing extra to it. I wanna feel more. I wanna have more, and that goes across the generations. Because a lot of people, guests I've had, who talk about the generation gaps and the differences in those generations, where some people show up and that's exactly what they want to do. They want to show up and do the work and then go home, and then you have some other, maybe the younger generation who wants to feel more and feel like they're providing more value to the company and have that ownership. But I think that everyone probably still feels a little bit of
Mhm.
value to themselves, and it feels good for them to be able to generate that value no matter what age gap or what generation they're from.
Yeah. Human nature hasn't changed in all of recorded history. It just hasn't. But a lot of the experts talk about it like it somehow has. No, it
Mhm.
hasn't. What's changed to me is the environment. And I think it's a 50-50 street here where a lot of times when we have these discussions and I hear leadership experts out there, you're getting low engagement because of how you are as leaders and as a company.
Yeah.
And I keep going back to, wait a minute, every one of these team members said, I will come in and do these things, create this value if you pay me this. We're paying them 100% of what we agreed to. Yes, leadership could be better, the culture could be better, and all of it. Where's their integrity to do what they agreed to do?
Hmm.
And so when people tell me the culture here is terrible, well, you're there, you're part of the culture.
Yeah.
What are you doing to guide it? And I've had team members, I can think of one, and she was in our customer support department, wasn't a leader, and she unfortunately passed from cancer. And we had to shut the company down because so many people went to her funeral, and she impacted so many people and elevated the emotional energy and all of it. Every single team member can impact the culture and move it in a better direction. But if
Yeah.
they're going to come in and be an expert on what's wrong with the world and everybody, and they know what's best because of the only adult that's ever been in any room, is how it comes off to me when they describe it, with their arms folded, waiting for the world to roll out the way they want. No, I think go build this.
Hmm.
Whether it's in your family, it's in the place that you work, it's in communities that are important to you. Be that person. But I'm really surprised that we keep saying it's the company's fault and it gives people an excuse to only give 20, 30, 40% of what they agreed to for what they're being fully paid. We don't have, it's not quiet quitting and all this other stuff that people talk about. We have a crisis of character here. Let's have some integrity. Let's do what we said. And if you don't like the environment, do what you can to improve it. If that doesn't work for you, go find something else. Or better yet, start a business and prove to them how it can be done in the right way. It's a lot harder than you think.
No, you're absolutely right.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I actually tell my daughter that she's only 10, but I tell her this a lot. Everybody can complain. Everyone can find an excuse. It's the hard part is to have energy and be positive in the negative situations, right? And stay and find a positive out of it, and then going and trying to find a change and make things happen. And so obviously I talk to the people that I've led as well, but I seem to talk to my daughter a lot about it recently, just because of the fact that she's coming into that age, where she thinks that she knows everything. But it's very true for across the board. Is it's so easy for employees to come up and just be like, well, everyone else is doing it. This culture is terrible, and I'm not going to give any more energy than I have to. And it's like, then you're going to have to deal with that for the longevity of your job, because it's never going to change if you're going to do that. And then you're also pushing people to do the exact same thing and constantly complain, right?
Oh, you're 100% right. No
Yeah.
matter how bad your manager is, you agreed to do something, lead by example and give 100% of what you agreed to for what you're being paid.
Mhm.
And then have better like self-awareness and social awareness and regulation and all of it. And usually when managers are that way, it's insecurity based. There's lots of issues. It's not about you. Just go forward and do what you agreed to do for the pay. And if you want to make a change, don't be a victim while you're there. Just,
Yeah.
give it your best or make a change. Go get another job, or like I said, start your own business and prove to everybody this is the best way to do it.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Don't just accept it. Right. Now, I love this lead. And I really do appreciate you joining today. This has been amazing. I did want to ask before we go, though, for listeners who want to deep dive into value creation, leadership, or mind methodology, how can they connect with you and learn more about your work and execute to win? I know you talked about the website a little bit, but how can they connect with you?
Yeah, please go to etw.com and all the resources will be there. You can find out about our Leadership Value Lab. You can get my book, Your Most Important Number, that really describes the mind management system. And if you're interested in taking a value creation culture into the family, I'm CEO of another company called Dinner Table Family. And I just released a book about 5 weeks ago titled Value Creation Family. And you can go to valuecreationfamily.com, get a copy of the book. It's pretty cool. It's selling a lot of copies fast, and I'm super pleased by that. And you can go to dinnertable.com and learn about how to create value much more intentionally and more effectively within your family and really, centered on raising kids that will create value in the world and working backwards from what are the character traits, the beliefs, and the capabilities that will make them most successful when they become an adult at 18, and how can we be intentionally designing healthy struggles to get them ready for that as early as 3 years old, but start at any age going forward. So yeah, if you want to learn about holistic value creation, etw.com or dinnertablefamily.com for the business side and the family side.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. And I'm gonna have to check that out myself. I have 5 children of my own, so I'm gonna have to start, getting into that as well. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, for anybody who's listening, please make sure you guys are checking that out. Well, Lee, thank you again for joining. I really do appreciate you spending time with me and the listeners today.
Appreciate you having me and your very thoughtful questions. Thank you.